Hello and welcome to this What's New session. My name is Rasmus Wolf Jensen, and today we'll be looking into what's new in the B1 Usability Package 4.0.2 release. First major new thing is that we now support Italian language in the package. So if you're running SAP Business One in Italian, it will always also run in Italian for the usability package. Next up, we have a lot of new functionality in the B1 print and delivery. The first one is email translations. This means that if you go to a report action of type email, you will be able to use the translation feature that SAP Business One provides out of the box. So you can translate the subject, you can translate the body, and you can translate the name of the attachment. If doing so, and the report that you actually print out or the business partner related to have the correct language, it will automatically take that language into account. This means that if you have many different emails in a lot of different languages, you can save a lot of configuration by only making one configuration and just translating that one configuration. Also for B1 print and delivery, we now support some new document types. First of all, we support the document of sales opportunity, so we can print and email your sales opportunity if you want to. And also for banking, we support the incoming and outgoing payments. And for incoming and outgoing payments, you can also use the standard document printing system, so you can batch a set of incoming payments or outgoing payments. In addition to new types supported, we also have for the file types, we support a lot of new features. We now support the editable RTF, the Excel records, HTML, tab separated text, Word for Windows, and XML. So if you want to export to these features, you simply just need to go and choose that type now. Final new feature of B1 print and delivery is we now support mass import-export of report actions. So in the past you had the import-export buttons, but they only took one at a time. Now you can choose between one or multiple, just like the rest of the usability package. Moving on to B1 Document Manager, we have two new features. The first one is the category subfolder system. This allows you to, for business partners and items, create different categories of subfolders. So in this case, I've created a contracts, a promotions, and a pictures folder. And now when I attach a document, I can choose either to put it in the root folder, the folder belonging to the business partner, or to one of the three folders down here. And as you put things into these, you will see the folders popping up with your files in them. Then when you need to search, you can either search in all folders or you can search in a specific folder if you want to. In addition, the search feature will now also include searches from Business One itself in case of if you have activities to the business partner selected and that activity have one or more attachments, those attachments will now also appear in the search result when you search with Document Manager. Moving on to B1 Search, we have a little new feature. We simply have a new configuration for the B1 Search where you can set up the search result limits. In the past, the default was 100, so if you search for something and you got more than 100 AI invoices back, you only saw the top 100. Now you can either set it lower in order to search faster or set it higher in order to get more results back if needed. Next, we have for the B1 validation system a rare but very, very powerful new feature, and that is the NEWID keyword. The problem with data in Business One is that you of course can have multiple users adding data at the same time. So for example, if you had a sales order and you wanted to use the newly added number in something, it could be an activity, for example, you would have the problem that you couldn't rely on this being 151, because if another user on another machine had actually used that number, you will actually get a completely different number. So the dynamic syntax was not good to read this number off, because it couldn't actually rely on it. So what you can do now, if you have events of type data add or data update, and the action success is equal true, you can use the special keyword NEWID. And that will always give you back the doc entry or the unique ID of what you have just added to the system. So I'm just using here in a matrix, but of course I could use it anywhere where the dynamic syntax is supported. That way you can be sure you get a multi-user environment safe ID back, and in this case it's a doc entry. In my doc database it's the same ID, but you should be aware, of course, if you want to use the doc num, you need to get the doc num from SQL in order to get that as well. Moving on to default data, we have a very simple new feature. It's simply that we now support import and export of default data. You should be aware, of course, that many of these fields are related to a auto-generated ID behind. So when you import it into a completely different database, you might not be able to say these are exactly the same price lists as in the new and the old system, because the IDs might be different. But if you have a completely synchronized databases, it should be possible, and of course for some of the more standard fields it's possible. If not possible, the Business One import feature will warn you about these problems. Next up is the exchange rates, where we have a new exchange rate provider. We have the Czech National Bank now, so if you are in that area and you want to use that provider instead of some of the others we have already, you can go in and set that up as the default provider of your exchange rates. And as always, if some people find any exchange rate providers in their local countries, please send them to us and we will try to incorporate them. Moving on to function buttons, where we have add-on supported add function buttons to Windows. Right now it's only usability package itself, so you can see I took the exchange rate configuration and added a function button simply by right clicking. But if any other value-added resellers or SSPs has code that they want to be able to enable this option on, then please contact us and you can get some more information on how to do this. It's 5-10 lines of code that you need to put into your add-on and give a new release of, and then you should be able to support it. Next up is user groups. User group was introduced in 4.0 and they work exactly as before, but we now have import-export features for those as well. So you can set up a set of user groups and put them onto another database. Again, if you of course import to a database that doesn't have the same users in it, you might end up with some problems not finding the correct users. The system would warn you, but if they are the same, you should be able to just mass import-export. One of the big new features we have for 4.0.2 is that the quick create is now customizable. In the past, the quick create looked like this, but we found that some people wanted additional fields, some people didn't want some of these fields, so there was not any one size fits all. So from now on, you can go to the configuration of quick create. This is only for quick create business partner so far, but if there's a need for it, we will do it for items as well. But you simply can press this little button and up pops what fields are actually shown on the screen. Code, type and name is always there, but the rest is customizable. So you can simply take the fields that you want to include, you can move them up and down, and we have included some additional fields that you can include, and it also includes UDFs, so those are just out of the box. But we are taking the most important that we have got from feedback so far, and you are able to check them out, and as you put more or less fields on it, the quick create will grow larger and smaller. So if you want more fields than you see here, you should contact us and we will try to add some additional fields if possible. Moving on to Toolbox, where we again have a functionality which was called automatic numbers, which doesn't have a one-size-fits-all. We had a system, this was our best practice of adding numbers, but people often asked us, could you make it in a slightly different way with some prefix on the number, or could I ignore some of the numbers I have put in incorrectly? So now you can press this little button and up comes the SQL that was behind the scenes before on how to actually select a new number. So this was this one, and into that we have included an ignore system. So if you had numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and so on, and you by mistake added 1000, the previous system would just say 1001, 1002 and so on. But if you want to ignore 1000, you could simply put it into the ignore list now, and it will continue where you left off before the mistake. You can change the SQL for leads, customers and suppliers, and you can also do it for items as well, of course. And you can go on and take this and completely change this as well. We support the dynamic syntax in the SQL as well, so there should be many options on how you should actually change the SQL. You should be able to pretty much do anything, but if you turn up and want to go back, you can of course just press restore. Another smart feature for Toolbox is that in the Zipcodes, we now support the Czech Republic and Slovakia as well. And again, if some people have a list of all their zip codes in their country, please send them to us and we will try to include them in the product. Moving on to a few new features in universal functions. First up is line loop, and we saw in the past that if you did a line loop and you transferred data on manipulating a lot of fields, the screen would begin to flicker and it will take a long time to actually do this. So now we introduce a new feature. It is not on by default on existing configuration, so you should activate it if you want to, because there's certain scenarios where the freeze doesn't work. But if you actually do this freeze, you will normally see an improved performance when transferring or manipulating a lot of lines. Final two new features I will show today is in the Universal Function SQL report, where we now, in the past we of course supported the %0, %1 and so on to be able to ask for a from date and a to date, and we used them in SQL, but you couldn't use them in form title. That is possible now, so you can, for example, ask for these two dates and in the title actually tell this was from this period, that is the result of the data. The other enhancement is that we normally have this format syntax where you put in OINV and turn docnum into an orange arrow so you can actually go to that document. Some people need it for the same for doc entry, so we now include OINV underscore entry or ORDR underscore entry in order to actually be able to work with orange arrows directly from the doc entry as well. B1 Usability Package 4.0.2 also include a lot of bug fixes, but here are the three most important bug fixes that you need to know. We have in the past, since 3.9.3, had some backward compatibility issues with B1 validation system configurations versus item placement tool if those configurations actually use those item placement tool new items. So this was primarily due to a change in Business One by itself in the core SDK from patch level 13 and on. And we have struggled with finding different ways of doing it, but we should now have found a way to be completely backwards compatible with the different issues some people have found. They are pretty rare, so you might not have had this problem, but certain specific configuration would have some problems, and they should now be fixed because we have moved UDFs back to before action, which we previously thought it wouldn't be possible to do that. Also, some people have found that if they used the mass import, they ended up with configuration that they couldn't update. There was some problems with updating things where you have imported something without any lines, for example in a B1 validation configuration. And what you needed to do, you needed to just add that line and then you could update. Now the mass import will automatically put that line into the system if missing. So there shouldn't be any problems in the future importing, mass importing. Finally, some people have seen that if they use the XML rendering mode of item placement tool or content creator onto pane levels, new tabs that they made, they would see that sometimes when switching between add and find mode, the new items on that new pane would overlap the existing items on that screen. We have now created a temporary fix for that, because what we have found is that the main problem is a bug in the SAP SDK. We are currently in the process of contacting SAP on this problem, and we would need a fix from their side in order to fully fix this problem. What we have done is we make a small change, so you will for a split second be able to see the items on both screens, but they will go away in a split second. So visual is not that pleasing, therefore we call it a temporary fix, but it will fix the problem essentially. And when SAP fix the problem, we can then take our temporary fix away and everything should work. So as always, this release is now available for download, and you need to go to boyum-it.com/sbo in order to download it.
This concludes this session. For training material, please go to service.boyum-it.com/education, or if you want a free demo of the product, go to license.boyum-it.com/B1UP. If you want to contact us, you can do it either by our sales email or our support email. Thank you for attending.